I am really proud today to invite two big figures for AI, for the ecosystem of AI in Africa. Ulrich,
yes.
Ulrich, and Shakira. Shakir. It's not Shakira.
No.
Yeah.
We all know Arabic.
So Ulrich and Shakir, you are so famous. We are in INDABA now, and everyone is completely amazed. But by what you are giving to the community, and it's honor to me that I will have this interview to introduce some insightful talk to the African AI community. So let's begin with Ulrich. Would you please present yourself for those who don't know you, especially in Tunisia?
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Ulrich Pacquet. I'm a research scientist at Google DeepMind, or DeepMind now, in London. I'm South African. I grew up in South Africa, studied in South Africa, and then had the privilege to spend a lot of time in the UK, either as a PhD student in Cambridge, or as someone who worked in two different startups. I worked in Microsoft Research for 6 years, a startup that was acquired by Apple. I worked in Apple for a short while, and have been in DeepMind for the last 6. And in DeepMind, some seeds were sown along with other crazy friends to start an initiative in Africa, which we'll tell you about a little bit later.
Yeah, an amazing professional pathway, and also in INDABA you are among the founders of this big organization. And today we are in the 5th edition of INDABA, which is held in Tunisia. So can you talk me about this initiative?
Yes, so the Deep Learning INDABA exists for one purpose only, and that is to strengthen machine learning in Africa. It does it in a number of ways. We strengthen machine learning by building the community, by recognizing people who do great research, by developing leaders, which essentially means just throwing students in the deep end and seeing how they swim, and they do very, very well. And then there's a 4th pillar, which I can't remember because I'm very sleep deprived, but I'm sure Shakir will fill it in. We started because when Shakir and I and a few others went to international machine learning conferences, people would take our badges and say, Africa, where's that? And we were often the only people from Africa at these conferences. And we wondered whether it's not strategically a good thing to bring one of these big conferences to Africa back in the day. It turned out to be a very bad idea, because you have people who parachute in and parachute out, and then nothing changes on the ground. And thought, let's just do our own thing.
But what does it mean in INDABA for you? We have met already in 2019 in INDABA X in Tunisia, and you are now here 3 years after. So does something change from this date to now so far?
Yeah, INDABA is not an organization, it's a movement. It's really a grassroots movement where no one draws a salary. It's run by a community of people who care about tech and machine learning, but more importantly care about each other. And then they have a shared common goal of strengthening machine learning across the continent. So what we've seen in the last few years is that the level of technical expertise has risen tremendously. The level of engagement has risen tremendously. The level of friendships have grown exponentially. The level of engagement has grown, and the level of respect that people have for machine learning that is done in Africa has grown as well. And the number of incredibly cool projects and startups and things that are being germinated and growing now is just absolutely astounding.
Shakir, you have listened to Ulrich talking about how fast INDABA is getting, especially in fostering AI community in Africa. Would you please first present yourself, and then talk me how would be INDABA in the next coming years?
Okay, well, hello and thank you for having us. It's so exciting to be here. It's so exciting. Actually, it's our first time Ulrich and I have actually spoken together about the INDABA. We've spoken individually many times, we've given talks about, so it's actually, I think, something very special for the two of us, and that's a gift I think you've given us today. My name is Shakir Mohamed. I'm also from South Africa, and actually Ulrich and I, our path looks the same for very much of the time. I have an undergraduate degree in electrical and information engineering and a master's degree as well. And at some point I think for so many people across our continent, especially in South Africa, you get to a point where you really want to excel in your research. You want to go to the next level. And unfortunately at that point, and sort of maybe part of the backstory of all of the INDABA, is that you can't stay in your country. There isn't anyone who can help you get to that next level. So I also left with a Commonwealth Scholarship to go to the University of Cambridge, where I did a PhD. I did a postdoc afterwards where I moved to Canada for 2 years, and Canada is an amazing country to spend some time in, particularly in the west coast where it doesn't snow and it's not so cold. And then at the end of my fellowship there was a small little startup called DeepMind that was just doing its first round of hiring. They were looking for new people to come.
How many people at the time?
Well, maybe around 40 people, and our research organization had maybe 10 people. So I was lucky to then join DeepMind, and I was then part of that early research organization, and I've been there now 10 years. I'm a director of research, and so I have responsibilities for teams to unfold many different kinds of projects.
Which
and
is
I myself
getting bigger and bigger. You are now 1,000.
I don't even know the numbers anymore, but it gets bigger, and that's part of the opportunity we have to do our work. But of course, alongside that, I'm also, like Ulrich, a founder of the Deep Learning INDABA, and we are also its trustees, so we're responsible for maintaining the health of the INDABA as an organization, but also as a movement in that kind of way. And then I have several other kind of hats that I do. I'm also involved in supporting machine learning communities globally. So I sit on the board of our large machine learning conferences, of ICML, ICLR, and NeurIPS, and then support other governments and funding agencies as well. What happens if you look at climate change, for example, you have many cases where new technologies are developed elsewhere. Also, they're the places that created the problems to begin with. You create a new technology, wind energy, for example, and then you re-export it back. And so you keep countries in this kind of economic cycle of dependence. And the same thing is already unfolding with many different kinds of AI technologies, whether that's in healthcare, surveillance, biometrics, policing services, judicial services, etc. So what we need to do is also intervene there, and of course the new generation, who are the leaders of the future, who are the ones who will be the next people of government, the next professors of universities, the people who are going to be running corporates. They can be invested with power and authority and knowledge to actually change that. So anyway, that's not really an answer to your question, but that's more of a kind of bigger kind of constraints of the kind of things that I am seeing for us to do. But I reserve the right to change my mind on this.
Can I say 5 more sentences to what Shakira said? Because we do actually have I had a game plan 5 years ago, and it had layers. The first layer was that a strong community has to exist. People have to trust each other. People have to be able to collaborate and do research across universities, across people in the same city, then across people in the same country, and then across researchers and practitioners across the continent. And if that works, then good research will flow out of it. And currently we're seeing a lot of cool stuff at the poster sessions at the INDABA. There's a lot of successes with INSADEEP here in Tunisia, with Masakane winning awards. But then there are layers of technical training above that we hope to put in place. There needs to be, so the INDABA is a short gathering. You can only learn so much in a short gathering. Part of a strategy could be to place longer term, deeper technical courses across the continent and see them. And eventually the pipe dream is that there would be enough strong research centers across Africa that a bright student wouldn't have to send an application to MIT or Stanford, but to send it to a university in Tunisia or in Algeria or in South Africa or in Kenya. And that they would have enough peers who work at advanced level research where they are, that is the most attractive option for them. And if we reach that, then the economies around those institutions will grow. So we're halfway there, but the second half's always much harder to execute.
But I want to ask you a dumb question.
Yeah.
Do you believe in Africa? Because a lot of people say Africa should not be left behind. But when we see the competitive around AI in the world with the Chinese government that makes investing a lot of money with the deep tech big companies in America and in Europe, etc. Do you believe that Africa can have their own piece of cake on this field?
Yeah, because it's bottoms up. Everything else is done from the top down. And here there's real ownership from the people who are actually doing it. That's reason number one.
Yeah.
Reason number two is that I should not say this on record, but it's easier to bend and break the rules and work with ministries like your own, collaborate with them to actually chart and it's really true. It's really true. It's easier to do pioneering work where less work has been done before. It's very, very difficult to do pioneering work in a place where there's a very, very rigid and structured bureaucracy with all the baggage that it brings. So the wonderful thing about INDABA is that there's the freedom to recreate a new culture of doing research. There's freedom to dream up what the future would hold without having to really respect 500 years of structural rules.
Okay, Shakir, I was listening to the opening keynote talk of Karim Bagir, and he said that the secret sources of Africa AI is the AI ecosystem and startups. How far do you agree with this message, and what would be the opportunities or the strengths of AI in Africa? What would be?
Yeah, I love that line of Karim's that the secret source are communities and startups. But I actually think you made a very good comment after it that actually there are other components of that secret source, that governments are part of that kind of secret source. So I definitely think that that's another really big component. And then there will be at least a fourth other component, which are kind of civil society more generally that is not government, so non-governmental in some sense. And I think if you can align these four, then you really have a really powerful kind of machinery that just builds on each other. And so communities, I think, has been one thing that you see so many examples, and this is the evidence throughout the week that the INDABA, in 2016 when we were at this big conference called Europe, we weren't the only ones who were observing that this kind of inequality was going on in the world. At the same time, there were several other people who also saw the same thing, and at the same time, many other organizations. The most widely recognized one is called Black in AI. And at the same conference, the same kind of spark appeared in their mind. And so I think and we actually work very closely with Black in AI in general. And we've worked with so many other organizations, Data Science Africa, Data Science Nigeria. And then
And DSNA, Data Science for North Africa.
Data Science North Africa and Arabia as well, that has and you see this powerful group, and then what that has created was a platform for new groups to be created. So then when people come together, they can create new organizations like Masakane. There is a new little startup that's actually be birthed somewhere around, that's still in stealth, that's hiding around in the corners here of INDABA, learning and planning their own next steps. And you see other kinds of groups working in health who are also here using it as a platform. So I think that kind of ecosystem is good, and that ecosystem is a global one now also. We used to always ask the question to each other, part of our work is to see if AI, which is considered a global activity, can be made truly global, because we didn't believe that was the case. Global in people's mind meant Western Europe and North America, and that cannot be global. And since we began our work of INDABA in late 2016, February 2017, when we decided we're definitely going to do it. Since then, there have been new communities across the world, in Eastern Europe, in South America, in Southeast Asia, in South Asia, in the Mediterranean, all sort of following and seeing the INDABA as that kind of example, and then innovating in their own kind of ways, because their own regions have the same kind of issues, the same kind of challenges, and they all need for secret sauce, but the ingredients of the secret sauce is the same. You can just combine it in different ways based on the kind of flavors and what you have around for you. And I think startups is maybe where the next kind of role for innovation needs to come from. And maybe that doesn't necessarily need to come from a place like the INDABA, but the INDABA can be still, again, that platform where startups come to see where there are new ideas, to find new people, to find co-founders, to hopefully in the future, which we don't do right now, provide an interface for seed funders or angel investors or VC funders to invest in people to build those new things. And you see that kind of change going over time. Karim is always showing us these kind of numbers, and so I think that will be good. And of course, there's a role for existing companies as well to understand that there's an ecosystem, and everything always works in an ecosystem and builds on each other.
Both of you are inspiring a lot of people, a lot of researchers. So if you have to give a recommendation for them, how to build their career, how to progress, how to engage in AI field, what would be the top 3 recommendation or the top 1 recommendation for them?
People will not like this if I say this, but I would agree. My top recommendation would be to study in great depth 1 algorithms textbook, 1 statistics textbook or probability theory textbook, and 1 mathematics textbook, including all the theory and exercises while you are still young. Because you will not be able to do great AI research unless you have that foundation.
And single, not married.
Sorry?
Single, not married.
Yeah, and then the other reason is as you grow older, it's actually harder to do these technical things. So if you're now 20 or 25, open those math textbooks and do the hard theory.
I love that.
It's my first time really this recommendation. And you, Shakir?
I will just give the one that everyone always says, is that if you look at any of our journeys, the way we got to where we are is because other people helped us. So you have to invest in your network, in the kind of people, and many times they will be accidental, but you don't need to rely purely on chance. Chance needs to happen, but you can invest in yourself. So be proactive, put yourself forward, find tools that help you get over feeling unconfident and shy, and that someone is too famous or too important or too busy to speak to you and help you. And that was the only reason that I actually in the end applied myself to go to the University of Cambridge. I actually didn't want to. I had that same thought, like this is the greatest university on earth. You know, you don't just go apply from the other end of the world. And then this person came to me literally every day of the week for 5 weeks. How is the application coming? I said, yes, I'm doing it. And of course, I was doing nothing. The next thing, how is the application coming? I was like, I'm going to do it. And then eventually I did do it. And then, the rest is history in some sense. But, that's the sort of, you can just choose any kind of moment of your life, your first paper that you got accepted, and who was the person, the postdoc that helped you actually write code and actually see that you could do it and help you write, or the first time the connection to send an email to the co-founder of this startup. Someone was there who said, oh, I think you should just send them a message, or, your next promotion, or almost anything. So, that's a repeatable one. Everyone says it. But
it's as simple as that. So I will text DeepMind tomorrow.
You can, again, the network, there is an ecosystem effect. You can't do anything. So I definitely think that's sort of one.
Both of you have a long professional experience in DeepMind, in fact, and DeepMind is doing really amazing in the field of AI, especially since they announced the AlphaZero, says AlphaGo, etc. So, would you tell me about this field of research with DeepMind? How it would be their next 5 years strategy or orientation? How do you see the sector of AI in terms of business? How can startup develop business in AI? What would be the key trends in the next coming years?
I'll speak about DeepMind and key trends separately.
Yeah.
Okay, we should
Rephrase.
So you should think about DeepMind as a pioneering company. Putting on my DeepMind hat. When Shakir and I went to our CEO, Demis Asabis, what's now 6 years ago, we asked him, and I made Shakir do the talking. I was like, we asked him if we could run a series of masterclasses for students in Africa around machine learning, maybe for 40 students. And Demis believed in that thing. And he said, I'll allow you to do it. I'll give you a week off work. You don't have to take vacation. And as long as it doesn't infringe with your job, I'll fully support it. And then this community has completely exploded. And with sort of that pioneering spirit, he's just fully supported it all the way. So I think belief in what your people in your team do, that's really, really critical. With regards to what the future will hold for AI, and this is wearing not my DeepMind hat, but my INDABA and personal hat. I had a friend who said that when his kids are teenagers, they would not be driving their own cars. They would never have to be able to take a driving license test. And they're almost teenagers now. My last disclaimer is that if we look at how AI has progressed, things always take a lot longer than we anticipate. But that period, that window is becoming shorter and shorter in terms of how things are getting executed.
So, Shakir, how do you foresee the development of AI?
Yeah, it's interesting because I've now seen all phases of having been in DeepMind for 10 years. There's a kind of lesson of just yourself as a scientist, as an engineer, being adaptive, and then being in a place that is equally also adapting and controlling the pace of change. And you have a sphere of influence, and in that sphere of influence you can control the pace of which you work, where you are focusing, how you are working, and ultimately people being the most important thing, how you are working with people, coordinating people, doing these. So, all organizations and how you need to drive new research needs to, I think, have that same phase. In the old days, when I was working on small little games, trying to see if RL was working, that's completely different from my own next phase when then I was working on healthcare, for example, and working with a large hospital provider. Now I don't work on healthcare anymore. Now I'm working on AI and its role in climate change, for example. And so, you need to have that ability to change yourself. And I think part of what Ulrich is saying, there's one remedy to the fact that as you're getting older, some things are harder to do, is that when you change your field, when you change the place you work in, you become naive again. And naivety is a great power because you see the world with a very fresh eye, with an excitement, with a kind of joy. Maybe many of the listeners will know the great intellectual Edward Said. And Edward Said, of course, was a great activist for Palestine and also a very important literary critic. And he always said the thing we should do is build more communities and movements with naivety. And with amateurism, that was the word that he used. And amateurism, he said, because amateurism meant care and dedication and affection, and that's what you should do, rather than professionalism, which meant structures and deepening of specialization and lack of care, and the opposite of that. So I think, that's sort of maybe the thing we try and do organizationally, although that's not always the case. I think the thing we try and do in the INDABA as well, to maintain that kind of level of amateurism, because that's the thing that drives passion, and you can see it every year. But you can't do that too much. You do need to professionalize, get structure, learn best practices. And so I think this is also where the startup communities benefit now a great deal, because you have much more coordination opportunities to meet each other. You can meet people within industries as well. And then there's a kind of very powerful exchange of best practices of what it means to build a data infrastructure, how to deploy systems at scale, what it means to think about security, privacy, respect, ethics, at the very beginning of their companies. And so you see companies today are very different from companies 5 years or even 10 years ago. So where all of that is going, is interesting, and companies will have to decide for themselves. And I think healthcare, I do believe, is genuinely one of those really important places to work. But healthcare work is not easy to do in most places of the world.
Yeah.
So the people who find themselves in countries and in institutions that allow them to do really innovative work, I think there can be so much change and opportunity. And of course, healthcare is one of the most important of the Sustainable Development Goals. And so,
how far the COVID-19 fastered the development of AI, because a lot of research, a lot of solutions, especially for discovering new proteins, new cells, etc. So, how far this pandemic impacted the AI research?
I think tremendously. One thing it taught us is that you need a strong project with a very clear goal and a deadline and strong incentives to execute, and then people fall in line and execute.
Yeah.
And it also fostered a large amount of collaboration. In the last 2 years of COVID, we've seen people collaborate across fields of economics to medicine to genomics to AI to statistics. We've also seen in the COVID pandemic that the traditional statistical bodies are invaluable in the ecosystem. They are some of the most important public bodies and institutions we have as functions of government.
So now I will ask you the final question. So what is your impression of this INDABA session edition? What are the highlights of this edition, and what will your message to the African AI community for this year? Yeah, let's begin with Shakir.
So far, I am loving this. There was a kind of joy of coming back together, of just being with everyone, for us being together again here on the ground, that we could not replicate any other way, as much as online actually has opened up many things. And I think what was also amazing was to be here in Tunis. Of course, Tunis is a beautiful city. You can't just not be happy here. But it was important strategically for us to have continued to move to different countries and to come to different regions, particularly because these are not places people will ordinarily think to come and do things. But now they're here, their whole understanding of the world is somehow different. And Africa means many different things to many different people. And I think being here gives everyone an opportunity to think a little bit more expansively about what that means. And the fact that it doesn't need to mean one thing. It can mean many different things, and I think that's really important, and you see it from the way people are interacting, the way they're being here, the joy that they are having. And so, I just hope, as I said to everyone, that they should invest in meeting as many people as possible and remembering those kind of exchanges, because those exchanges, you never know when they will help. Of course, they should invest, they should learn, they should learn about the culture, and just take that spirit. Ultimately, what we ask of everyone is to take the spirit of the INDABA, and we have several kind of values running our organization. One of them is called Ubuntu, is the fact that we must work together, and we only succeed if we are doing it together. And that's our second value, which is called Masakane, that we build only together. And so that's what we ask everyone to take back. So when everyone goes back home, they should spread what they have learned, give a lecture themselves, help organize local communities, support funding, do research themselves, find a project, reach out to us if there's other ways we can help them build their local INDABA X communities. There's so many things to do. Of course, people must look after themselves first. So, self-care first, and then do the rest. So.
Thank you. So, Ulrich, the highlight of this edition and your message to the African AI community?
Well, INDABA is always high octane. We start at 8 in the morning and run until midnight, or some of the students in dorms run until like 4 o'clock and then sleep 2 hours and then continue. So it's probably one of the most intense weeks that anyone would ever experience in their lives. Intense in every kind of way, from the people you meet to the level of education and training that you get, to the practicals that you do here, to the partying that you do, to the level of friendships and trust that develops during this week. So for me, the highlight's always the Wednesday. It's usually an African Research Day when different students come and showcase the work that they've done. And it's really exciting to see how this is growing. And I always come with like binoculars and to scout and then a piece of paper to write down and take notes. A message to everyone who's listening to this is that you've been to the INDABA, you are now the expert. So it's your responsibility to be that expert where you are. Run an INDABA X event, get involved in organizing. You are here because you are a leader in one sense or another. And where you are looks very different from what it looks like in Tunis or in South Africa or any other place. So you'd really have to think creatively yourself in how you're going to apply yourself and the team around you to solve those problems. The INDABA works on the lean startup principle. If you've ever read that book, it just means that we always try something new. And if you go back home, it's a good idea to try something new and evaluate and see how it goes and adapt.
Yeah, that's why Shakir is changing always his ideas about everything. Yeah. So I'm happy to have you as my guest, and I really appreciated your positive and your inspiring interview. I hope that our AI community meet together in next INDABA event and with more inspiring experience, with more success. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for hosting the INDABA this year and opening your country and your city to us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Amazing.